Good morning, BookTube, YouTube. This is Johnny. Yeah, I thought since I am alone here inside my cell and Carol had to go to, this is Wednesday, July the 23rd, 2025. It is 9:10 in the morning here in Southwest Michigan, not that far from Lake Michigan. And yeah, my wife is leading a women's Bible study this morning, and then she has something else she's going to do at her church afterwards. And she told me this morning she wouldn't be home until 1 o'clock. So I'm here with some time with not being disturbed, and I can make a video at least 27 minutes. So I'm waking up to another day. It's supposed to be 91 degrees today. And everything is really dry. I was out in the backyard last night and everything is just wilting. It's just crying out for water. I do water my wildflowers and I water other plants, but the trees, if you were to water a tree, you have to leave the water on all night long. But I figured we've been in this house going on 33 years, 34 years, and we've had droughts in the past, and we live in farm country. It's like you go south of us, it's all corn, soybeans, chicken farmers, hog farmers, dairy farmers. It's a lot of farms. You go south. And if you go also around here is blueberries, strawberries. So it's farm country. Like this morning when my wife left, she left a little bit early to go down to the Holland farm, was it Holland Farm Market? What's it called? You know, it's where they sell vegetables and all kinds of things like apples and strawberries and beans and things like that. What is it called? The Holland Farmers Market? I can't remember. I used to go with her and take photos at the farmers market, but I don't do that anymore. Anyway, I'm rambling. I gotta wake up here. I thought what I would do is show you my Jonathan Lethem collection. I've shown you over the years, I've made videos. I'm a completist. If I have a certain writer that I gravitate towards or that I have found enjoyable to read, not saying that he is the most greatest writer in the world or the whatever, but one I have enjoyed reading that I can somewhat identify with culturally, maybe not spiritually, but is Jonathan Lethem. And I bought this and I was on my to be read list, and I've been reading it, Brooklyn crime novel by Jonathan Lethem. I got this out because, as I said, I try to read in the mornings Christian books up until noon, maybe early afternoon, and then I try to read nonfiction in the afternoons and early evenings, and then literary fiction in the evenings. Now, I'm not always consistent in that pattern of reading, but I finished some literary fiction just last week, and I wanted to find something else to read, and I wasn't really sure, and then I thought, oh, I'll read the Brooklyn crime novel by Jonathan Lethem, because I had just read last year Jonathan Lethem's dystopia novel, The Arrest. And I won't go into detail about this dystopia novel, which I was surprised that I enjoyed reading it, because I'm not really into science fiction, but it was an enjoyable read. Up here it says the best best-selling author of The Feral Detective. That's one I do not have in my Jonathan Lethem collection. I might have others, but when I remember that this morning, I might go out today. I have to go north side. I might, well, anyway, I'm going to pick that up soon, The Feral Detective, and add that to my Jonathan Lethem collection. So anyway, I read this, the rest, really enjoyed it. And so that's why I thought, well, I might as well read Jonathan Lethem, the Brooklyn crime novel. And before that, I told you I had, well, first of all, there was something I read a couple months ago. I came across on Amazon, and I read this. It's a little book called Jonathan Lethem, The Collapsing Frontier. And these are, what this is, it says, having stormed mainstream literature from the outskirts, Lethem has won a readership both wide and deep, all of whom appreciate his literary excellence, his morbid but compassionate humor, and the culture's attentiveness of his sci-fi origins. He has earned the right to tread anywhere, and his many admirers are ready to follow. This collection compiles his intensely personal thoughts on the most interesting and deplorable topics in post-modern America. It moves from original new fiction to insights on popular culture, cult, and canonical authors and pragmatic people. It's just a collection of his writings, and it was okay. It didn't blow me away, but since I into Jonathan Lethem, I just bought this. What really got me into Jonathan Lethem, I mean, I had books by him. I had collected novels by Jonathan Lethem, but never actually read them. And then a number of years ago, I bought this volume at a local family-owned bookstore in downtown Holland. And this came out in 2011. And I bought this. It's called Jonathan Lethem, The Ecstasy of Influence, Nonfiction, etc. It won the National Book Critics Circle Award finalists. And I read these essays, and I still pick it up. And I was really, it just was such great writing. And so then I decided to start reading Jonathan Lethem. These are nonfiction essays. And that's what really got me into him. And I still pick this up to read it. There's a picture of him. This is 2011. So then I was volunteering at the Book Nook a number of years ago, and I started reading when I was there. I saw this volume on the shelf in the Book Nook, the library used bookstore, and it was called Jonathan Lethem. And I had this in hardback, The Fortress of Solitude by Jonathan Lethem. But then I saw this edition, The Fortress of Solitude by Jonathan Lethem, and I read it. And I really enjoyed it. And so then recently I found another copy of The Fortress of Solitude by Jonathan Lethem. But it says in the back here, The Fortress of Solitude is the story of Dylan Ebadis growing up white and motherless in downtown Brooklyn in the 1970s. It is a neighborhood where the entertainments include mugging along with games of stoop ball. In the world, Dylan has one friend, a black teenager who, also motherless, named Mingus Rude. And as Lethem follows the knitting and unraveling of their friendship, he creates an overwhelming, rich, and emotionally gripping canvas of race and class superheroes, gentrification, funk, hip-hop, graffiti, tagging, loyalty, and memory. The Fortress of Solitude is the first great urban coming-of-age novel to appear in years. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. So then, talk about memory. One of the things that Jonathan Lethem, he edited a book called The Vintage Book of Amnesia, an anthology of writing on the subject of memory loss. And I have this by him. Yeah, these are a collection of essays on memory. There's one here, Jonathan Lethem. There's different ones by different writers. Walker Percy, which I collect. Some of these writers I've never heard of. Anyway, it's just a book, a vintage book of amnesia, an anthology of writing on the subject of memory loss. There's a Philip K. Dick, Shirley Jackson, Oliver Sacks, Martin Amis, Nagatov. Anyway, so I have that. I also have, I have this on CD, but not in book form. An earlier novel he wrote, You Don't Love Me Yet. Yeah, this is, this came out in, I don't know, it must be around the early 200s. So I have this, You Don't Love Me Yet. So then I got into reading, after I finished reading The Fortress of Solitude, I had this in my library, The Motherless Brooklyn, and by Jonathan Lethem, winner, National Book Critics Award, Sicker Award for Fiction. And I read this and I really enjoyed it, and I had it also in hardback for a long time. So then I read that, and these are the ones I haven't read that he wrote, and I plan someday to read these. He wrote called Chronic City. He writes all kind. The acclaimed author of Motherless Brooklyn and Fortress of Solitude returns with a roar, this gorgeous and searing portrayal of Manhattanites wrapped in their own delusions, desires, and lies. So, yeah, I haven't read this one. This one came out in 2009. This is, probably I'll read this in the near future, The Chronic City by Jonathan Lethem. Also, these are ones I picked up over the years. These are stories by Jonathan Lethem. The Wall of the Sky, The Wall of the Eye, 7 stories by Jonathan Lethem. I did read this, Lucky Allen and Other Stories by Jonathan Lethem. These are short stories. And then this is a novel I have not read, an earlier novel. This came out in when this one came out, 1997, As She Climbed Across the Table by Jonathan Lethem. Anna Karina left her husband for a dashing officer. Lady Shadowly left hers for the gamekeeper. Now Alice Coombs has left her boyfriend for nothing. Nothing at all. Just how that should have come to pass, and what Philip Engstrand, Alice's spurned boyfriend, can do about it is the premise of this speculative romance by this acclaimed author of Gun with Occasional Music. I don't think I have that one either. I don't have his Gun with Occasional Music. I don't have that one either. I do have this one here. This is Men in Cartoons. Contained, these are short stories by Jonathan Lethem. Has back here by Chicago Tribune. Brilliant. The stories in this collection show Lethem for the enormous, imaginative, and talented writer he is. So these are stories by Jonathan Lethem. This is one I haven't read either, The Gambler's Anatomy, a novel by Jonathan Lethem. This one came out in 2016. I haven't read this. And then I read, I did read somewhere between the Motherless Brooklyn and the Fortress of Solitude. I read Dissident Gardens by Jonathan Lethem. I really enjoyed this. Is probably one of my most favorite of his novels of the three, the Brooklyn, Motherless Brooklyn and Fortress of Solitude. I really enjoyed Dissident Gardens. I really enjoyed reading this, and so on. So that's kind of like my Jonathan Lethem collection. Jonathan Lethem also finished a novel by a writer. I read about this somewhere, that there was a writer named Don Carpenter, and he was working on a novel and he wasn't able to finish it. I don't remember the whole story, but it was called Fridays at Ericos by Don Carpenter, and this was finished by Jonathan Lethem. I read this somewhere, and so I picked it up since I'm into Jonathan Lethem. Don Carpenter was a close friend of many of San Francisco writers, but his closest friendship was with Robert Brannigan. And when Brannigan killed himself, Carpenter tried for some time to write a biography of his remarkable and deeply troubled friend. He finally abandoned that in favor of writing a novel. Fridays at Ericos is the story of four writers living in Northern California and Portland during the early heady days of the beat scene, a time of youth and opportunity. The story mixes the excitement of beginning with the melancholy of ambition, often thwarted and never satisfied. Loss of innocence is only the first price you pay. These are people, men and women, tender with expectation, at risk and in love. Carpenter also carefully draws a portrait of these two remarkable places, San Francisco and Portland, in the 50s and early 60s, when writers and bohemians were busy creating the groundwork of what came to be the counterculture. So that's why kind of, I'm into the counterculture, the 60s. I collect the writings of Brannigan, and that just really appealed to me. That's why I also, it's part of my Jonathan Lethem collection. So I just thought I'd show you my Jonathan Lethem collection. Yeah, like I said, I don't consider him the greatest writer, but he is a writer I can identify with culturally. The books that he mentions. One thing about Jonathan Lethem, he loves books. He loves. He's really into all kinds of American popular culture, and that's one thing I'm an American, and I've mentioned in my videos that I am a student of American literature. I like reading books that are anchored in American culture, and that's why I like reading Jonathan Lethem. He's anchored in the culture of the 70s, the late 60s, the 80s. I like New York City, the reading about abstract painters, the New York poets. I like reading about the cultural life of New York City, and he grew up in Brooklyn, Jonathan Lethem. His father is a painter, and is still a painter, still painting at 92 years old. And that's why I read one of the other writers that folk is like Saul Bellows. Maybe his novels not always centered in America, but he grew up in Chicago, Saul Bellows. And if you read his novels, Saul Bellows, he brings in some of his novels are anchored in Chicago and America and the whole Jewish American experience. And Philip Roth, John Updike, his novels are situated in American culture, more of the 60s. And then you have older writers like Mark Twain, and then you have the Beats, Jack Kerouac, in the 50s and late 40s. Of course, you have Richard Vonnegut, you have Joseph Heller, you have then you have the great historical fiction novels of Gore Vidal. He wrote whole history, American historical novels on Abraham Lincoln and Aaron Burr and the Gilded Age, and just goes on and on. So yeah, that's why I like Jonathan Lethem. Just so pick up the Fortress of Solitude, pick up Mothers in Brooklyn. Yeah, he's worth reading if you're into that kind of. But now, when I also Jonathan Lethem, another writers are like Richard Ford. He situates his novels in America. Then you have Richard Rusko, another American writer that I really enjoy reading. And all these novels and these stories are situated in America, and maybe the Midwest or the East Coast or the West Coast or Chicago or New York or San Francisco City, New York City, Chicago. And then you have the great Southern writers like Faulkner. His novels are situated in the South. And then you have, it just goes on and on. And Tom Wolfe, who writes about New York City, his novels. So I'm just basically saying that I like novels that by American writers. Now I do read novels by German writers and French writers and British writers. I've been reading. I like Anthony Trollope. I like Ernest Murdoch and Edith O'Brien, and just goes on and on. I like all kinds of writers from all different, Eastern European, French, British, French. I like South American writers, Colombian, Argentina, some Spain, Portugal, just goes on and on. But I really like reading about American writers because I am an American, and certain novelists I can really identify with, like Jonathan Lethem, and that's why I read him. So I just thought I'd show you my Jonathan Lethem collection. Yeah, I don't have everything that he wrote, but if I want to read literary fiction, I'll pick up. Now I read, like I said, I read all kinds of literary fiction, but I like reading Jonathan Lethem. Yeah, I should read Chronic City. I will in the near future. So I just thought I'd show you my Jonathan Lethem collection and just ramble here about literature. Yeah, this morning I ordered a book on the Synod of Dort. I'm into Reformed scholastic theology. I like the Canons of Dort. I like confessional theology, even though I'm no longer confessionally orthodox. I just go by the Bible. I don't let my theological system hedge me in. God is bigger than a theological system. But I do believe in the doctrines of sovereign free grace. I do believe that God is absolutely sovereign, that salvation is by grace, Christ alone, faith alone, the Bible alone, even though I do think it's important to know the history of biblical interpretation. It's good to have a good understanding of biblical hermeneutics. It's important to read the Bible and to know from Genesis to Revelation the history of redemption. Have a good historical redemptive understanding of the Bible. That's why my wife and I, we read through the Bible. We're going through the major prophets right now. We've gone through Isaiah, we're going through Jeremiah. Soon we'll be going through the prophet of Ezekiel. I've been reading through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so, yeah, read the Bible, pray, know that this world will come to an end, that it's time to seek the Lord and to prepare for His soon return. So I hope you're having a good reading week. Yeah, check out Jonathan Lethem. Go to the library. You don't have to buy his books. Just first go to the library and check them out. Yeah, read The Motherless Brooklyn, Fortress of Solitude. The Fortress of Solitude and The Motherless Brooklyn are going to be put into the Everyman's Library, one edition with both those in there, coming out in the future. So check those out. So I'll close. I can talk forever. May the Lord bless. Until next time, bye.